Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Leading Our Own Way. We're on a brand new week. We're on a brand new guest, and I hope you've all been leading your own way in some shape or form. If you haven't, and you're in that middle where you're a bit unsure, this is the place for you. Today, I have one special, amazing guest. A good friend of mine. We met in the education system here in Australia. Never thought it would lead to this, but it has. It's funny how the world works out in some way, isn't it? It's mental. I love it. Steven Trotter. Steven Trotter is incredible. He is the National Principal of the Year, an executive leader, and an author of the acclaimed book, The Art of Skimming Stones. I've got a copy right here, which I've gone through like there's no tomorrow. Oh, it's absolutely brilliant. With over 2 decades shaping educational leadership across Australia, Steven's journey is a testament to leading with humanity first. I love it. That's exactly what I stand for. He's transformed schools and inspired leaders through his work as an executive chair, system leader, and coach, always championing the power of authentic connection. In this chat today with Steven, he shares the pivotal moments that shaped him and his leadership style. From navigating toxic workplaces to building cultures rooted in trust and emotional intelligence. If you're ready to rethink what it means to truly lead, I think this conversation will definitely challenge and inspire and equip you to make a lasting impact. Anyway, here's Steven and myself with part 1, and it's going to be a part 2. It's a long one, but it's fun and it's exciting, and you'll definitely get something from our chat. Here's Steven and myself. Welcome to Leading Our Own Way. I'm your host, Andrew White, and this is the podcast that unveils captivating narratives of resilience and personal triumph. This podcast is for anyone seeking inspiration and insights on overcoming life's challenges. Follow and subscribe, and then we can lead together forever. Before we dive in, I want to give a big, massive shout out to our now new proud sponsor, Eshu Skincare, a brand that truly aligns with leading our own way. This Australian-born company is dedicated to keeping skincare simple, effective, and straightforward. They've made waves in the US, even landed in Macy's and over 300 stores, and now they're back with a renewed focus on healthy skin and real results. If you want authentic skincare that fits your lifestyle, check them out in the show notes. Thanks to Eshu Skincare for supporting real stories and mental fitness on Leading Our Own Way. And if you're interested in sponsoring like Eshu Skincare, drop us a message. We'd love to connect. Steven Trotter, there's a million ways I could have started this podcast based on what we're going to discuss today. But my question to you is, are you a human or are you a leader? And you can only answer one thing.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that's hard because they're very much intertwined. But I'm going to say, to be honest with you, I'm a human.
Why did you say that one and not the other?
Because I think before you can be a leader, you need to be a human. We're leading people. We're leading, humans that are actually doing great things and having a great impact, and that's got to be the result of good leadership. But in order to connect with people, you have to be a human first. So as much as I love my leadership, and, that's what we're going to be talking a lot about today. If you're not human first, you're going to really struggle to have that impact on other humans, other people, big people, little people. So yeah, I'll stick with that one.
Great answer. And I was hoping you were going on that angle. Sorry?
Bit of a curly one to start with.
I told you it was a bit quirky, didn't I? Was it a good question, though?
It is. And like I haven't been asked that before, but I think they can both get... there's a lot of grey there. I think when you actually think about it, a lot of people want to be a leader, but the very first thing you need to do before you can do that is actually be a human, be a person that's going to connect with other people.
Couldn't agree more, my friend. Couldn't agree more. And I kind of put you into a box on that one slightly.
No, that's all right. I like a bit of a challenge to start off with, get the brain thinking.
Well, that's it. I think we treat everything as a practice in that grey area, and it's not a practice, it's a foundation, isn't it? It's just even it's not education, it's everything. It's life, it's being outside on the streets, it's being in a cafe, it's whatever, you know. It's all about just connection and being a human, as you said. So I think people who are tuning in are pretty much going to know where we're going to go, but we need to get to know Steven Trotter.
And I think if you want to look at leadership without the human element, it's very sterile. Like you could read 100 books on leadership and it'll tell you to do the same thing. And it's a bloody easy job, really, when you read, you know, if I do this, and this, gee, I'm going to be a pretty bloody good leader. But the reality is the complexity of what we do is also the reason why we do it. You know, the most complex part of a leadership's job are people. But it's also the same reason why we do our job. So unless you can really connect with people and be that human first, the leadership stuff is almost irrelevant.
Pointless, I agree. Yeah. Well, first of all, Steven, thanks for joining me on Leading Our Own Way. It's my journey you've joined me on, so I appreciate it. It's such an honour to have you on the show.
Great to be here. You know, we booked it in a while ago, so I've been looking forward to it.
Me too. Yeah, we had to align with, you know, with school holidays here in Australia, Melbourne, Australia to be exact. So it's perfect timing for both of us because we both lead busy lives. You're doing your thing, which is going to become very, very crystal clear very soon. But you know, I've never had somebody that I've aligned with so much in terms of where we lie in our businesses and our core values and so on. But to start off nice and light, I've got Principal of the Year 2025 here on the show. That's going to be joining, which I hate to talk about, but we might as well make a bit of a joke out of it.
Yeah.
Teacher of the Year 2014. Get it out.
I promise you this is not sitting here on my desk often at all. I climbed in the roof and dusted it off. Look, it's a privilege, but at the same hand, it's you know, a real privilege and an honour to get recognised, but also happy to just get on with the work, and that one can sit in the background.
I've gone prepared, Steven.
You have, okay.
I'm showing a picture of Steve.
If you're not watching, the photos are coming out early.
They are coming out a bit early. Well, I've got another one of you as well. Where is that one? Hold on. Oh, it's the big one. Silly me. It's a bit blurry, but I had to do this one as the big one. The big ceremony.
No, that's fair enough. Yeah, that was in Sydney. It was at about August this year. So I went hoping to just get a certificate and a well done on being nominated. So to walk away with the trophy was a very big privilege and recognition for I'd say not necessarily for me, but for the people that have done a lot of the work with me along the way.
Absolutely. Well, you know, when I won that award, I certainly wasn't the best teacher. I learned pieces of everybody in my past, but coming from teaching high school in the UK to teaching primary school in Australia, I was in a no man's land, and I was learnt off. There was 4 girls I was working with, and I took pieces of all of them. I was in prep. I'd been teaching 17-year-olds, and all of a sudden I'm teaching prep. I was in no man's land for me. In a new country, it was all daunting, and all of a sudden I've been given a prep class, and I've taken it because I'm being sponsored by the school. So I'm like, I'll take it because I get to stay in Australia. It's a dream. I'm in paradise, right? And then I'm learning pieces from all the girls. I certainly wasn't the best teacher, but I think what I did bring to the table was my ability to talk. I'm a talker. I make friends left, right, and centre. And everyone who's listening who knows me go, yep, he doesn't stop talking. And, you know, that was just something I brought to the table. And I don't know if that was the reason why I went through what I went through, which my viewers know that the fact that I went through a bit of a traumatic experience through the education system and through teaching. But my ability to connect and just talk and be myself was something that I stood proudly of. I didn't even find it hard to do, but then I found it very, very hard to do down the track because of workplace bullying, toxic work environments, and so on. The dream of me wanting to do essentially what you are doing went way off track. I didn't want to do it anymore. I was put off completely. So I stopped going down that track. And I don't actually know where I'm going with this, to be honest, but I put the award away. After that, I didn't look at it like you. It was in the loft. It was in the attic. I didn't want to see it. It was in the shelf boxes when we moved. It was only really why I started this platform, why that's coming out, because it's now I understand that I'm not a victim anymore. It's part of my journey, you know. So now I've acknowledged why I think I may have won it. my ability to connect with the children, the parents, the community, somewhat the colleagues. Why do you think you won the award?
Look, it's probably connecting to quite a similar journey in many ways. It definitely hasn't been a smooth road to
Mm,
get to where I am and to receive that award. And some of the pathways that I've been on and some of the people that I've either been in leadership environments with or workplaces or organizations or had to work with or for or whatever it is have been really, really challenging.
yeah,
And in some of those cases, I couldn't see the light at the end of the tunnel, and had to work hard on finding my own motivation to continue to go. Like there was at one point there, I was going, look, maybe this isn't for me. Maybe I need to take up real estate, or maybe I was starting to think maybe this job isn't for me. And that was a result of the environment that I was in. And it was quite a toxic, really conflicting environment. And there were people in there that would, I wouldn't say thriving, but they were going okay. But it really was the conflict between my values and the values of the people leading the organization. Now, hindsight, I'll look back and I'll go, that those experiences were some of the most deepest learning experiences that I had for various reasons. But particularly I learned, and I didn't know this at the time, but I learned the leader I never want to become.
yeah,
I learned how I felt in certain situations, and so I knew that I didn't want others to feel that way when I was leading them. So
exactly.
that
Yeah,
combined with the fortunate of going, right, I've had these really tough, challenging experiences, but then equally I've had leaders that are absolutely amazing, and I still strive to be as good as them. And so because I've had those really diverse, varied experiences, I've been able to find myself in there and go, well, they're the parts of this experience I don't want to do, but here's examples of things that I do want to do. And what does that look like for me? What's my flavor when I walk into a staff room with my people? So that, I guess that's part of building the pathway to this. But ultimately, the success of the environments I've worked have been the result of the people that are standing in my classrooms. And my job is to build their capacity and make sure they have the confidence, the skills, the resources, the supports to be able to walk into that classroom and have the greatest impact possible. And that impact is varied. You're not. I was just reading something recently. It was a quote by Steve Goodyear, who said, harmony only happens when you've got everyone playing a different note. And when we're talking about harmony in the workplace, you want everyone to actually play a different note. You don't want the same note. You want that harmony. You want bits of everything. And so my role is to actually find what note they're playing and how can I actually enhance that? How can I make that part of the harmony? How can I bring them in? Even if it is a little bit left of center or a little bit out there, how do I take a breath, and what type of leader do they need me to be
yeah,
in order to get the best out of them? Because when I get the best out of my team, they're going to have a bigger impact in my learning environment. So I guess in a nutshell, the award was probably a recognition of the building of teams and capacity to do the work. So it's definitely not a solo award. It's I definitely wouldn't have got to that point had my teams not embraced the work that we did and then move forward with it.
they probably embraced it because they already felt safe around you, maybe.
Well, you've got to. It's a we're in an emotional business, and we've got emotional people learning in our environments, whether they're little people or big people or
Yeah,
adult people, and then we've got emotional educators that are standing in front of them every day and are really committed and take what they do really seriously. And then we've got emotional families that are invested in their children's education. And then you've got emotional leaders that just want the best for their environment. And it's a real challenge to sometimes align all of that work. But you've got to be in an environment where people feel safe to be emotional, but understand that we're in a professional world and we need to also have that balance of rational thinking with the emotional brain, with the problem solving, with the ability to go, this is hard, and go, yeah, it is. It is. Learning is hard. It's hard for our kids. It's hard for our adults. It's hard for our leaders. So I equally have to stand in front of my team and say, this is bloody hard. I actually don't know what to do here.
Yeah.
So how about we work it out? And that was something I learned over time, that, I don't have to wear a different hat because I'm a leader in terms of personality. I'm still me, and I'm still Steve, and I'm still, I still have my own challenges and things I'm working on, as do my staff. But they need to see that that's okay for me to be able to go, do you know what? I'm a bit vulnerable today. I'm not the expert. I'm not going to pretend to be the expert, but this person over here has a hell of a lot more knowledge on this than I do. So they're going to lead this work, and I'm going to equip them and empower them to do it.
That's right. And the problem on the flip side to that is you have a lot of leaders that get into it for purely the wrong reasons, whether it's to fill holes in their own life or an egotistical approach. And it's about then control and those type of personalities. That's very hard when you were hiring. I mean, you might have experienced that yourself with your journey. I know I have. Is there an example where you might have experienced that type of leader who was supposed to lead you and have your mind in mind?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Look, and there's one particular one that just sticks out to me, that really had a significant impact on my mental and physical health. And I had no idea what was going on, but the level of, I guess, again, ego. I was at this point, I was 2IC. I was the conduit between the staff and the leader, because it was sort of one of those scenarios where the staff would come in and go, is today a good day to talk to them?
Yeah.
I need to ask them for some leave. Is today a good day? And so I'd have to try and navigate that to help, engage and connect the staff with what they needed. Mm-hmm. But then equally in doing that, I was sort of copying the other side of it, that I'm sort of stepping on the leader's toes, but the confidence and trust and that psychological safety just wasn't there. And so I was constantly in this grapple with, where do I belong in this organization? Because I'm meant to be a senior leader, but I'm not being treated as one. I'm connecting with our colleagues and my staff that I'm leading and a part of as well, but I can't lead them because I'm not being empowered to do my own job as part of the senior leadership team. And there was this real drive around, I'm the boss, this leader, I'm the boss, you're not the boss. You don't have the right to ask me about A, B, or C. And even down to the point, the old scenario would just do things and then explain it later. And so people were having things done to them constantly, coming to me going, what is going on here? Why has this happened? Why is this classroom being moved? And I'm like, I actually don't know. And that was about 5 years I was sort of working in that environment, and it took a massive toll. And I didn't realize it at the time. I was trying to think of everything else that was having an impact on my health, and did I have allergies, and was it this, and was it that, and again, it wasn't till probably a few years later that I'd sort of recovered to a point where I could look back and go, wow, that was a pretty tough environment to work in. But
the body speaks to you, doesn't it?
It does. But I had to own that as well and say, right, well, I could either look back at that as a genuine, terrible, negative experience and shut it out of my mind, or I could look back at that and go, what can I take from that to make sure that doesn't ever happen again?
Yeah. Or at least prepare the mind and body and feel for deficiencies when it does happen again. I'm better prepared for it, and I can navigate it in a much more positive way rather than letting it cost me my health, my mental health, my physical health, whatever.
Yeah.
It's funny, isn't it? We talk about, and I know we're going to get into your book afterwards, But connection, the art of connection, the energy between two people, and understanding everyone at a much deeper level to see what's actually going on in their lives might help us understand them of why they might react in certain ways. Did you ever do that with that person? Did you ever understand at a deeper level? Maybe it was a shut-off book. It sounds like that. I say him, I don't know. But that person, did you ever understand them at a deeper level? Were they going through something, a divorce or you know what I mean? Anything, health scare. Looking back, did you know any of that knowledge, or is it still a closed book to this day?
Yeah, that was a pretty closed book, and I was young in my leadership journey as well, so I was trying to navigate what this meant.
Yeah.
I didn't understand it myself, and you get to a point where you go, is this really what I'm stepping into? Is this really leadership? And at that point in an education setting, like I'd had leaders in other fields that I'd been in, but I hadn't had any really strong senior leaders in that environment that I could compare with to say that this is actually not a good environment. So you take a fair bit of that on and go, maybe it's me,
Yeah.
maybe I'm not built for this. Maybe I need to seek something different because I can't cope. I can't handle the pressure of this leadership role. So you start to look for reasons around what that could be. And again, that's as equally unhealthy as the environment that I was in. But when you're in that space, as it's really difficult sometimes to see the other side because
Oh,
you're so invested and engrossed in what the hell is going on here and why do I feel this way? I don't get it. And particularly if you've got a lack of experience, it's very easy, and that's why I see now there's often leaders that are young and get into really complex environments, and we're finding them leaving the field, and it's because they're sitting there going, do you know what? Maybe I just can't do this. Maybe I'm just not built for this. But the reflection, if we can actually step back, get really a good mentor or someone that we can actually have a conversation with that's not invested in that space, I think that's a really good opportunity for learning, providing we use that opportunity for learning.
yeah. Absolutely. Again, we're going to go into your book, but there's an analogy in your book that you share about is it about around effective leadership being on the dance floor and being an
Yeah,
active learner and an engaged member to the team, and whilst also being on that other point view, that other perspective of looking down. So you're also amongst it, but then I think you use the analogy of a balcony,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
getting
yeah,
that big viewpoint to help support that management team. So in a way, also letting your leaders lead, right,
yeah.
as well.
It is, and
Yeah,
that on the balcony is a quote from many books. I can't actually quote who it's from at the moment.
I can find out for you later.
But yeah, yeah. And I think leadership's changed. So, go back a decade ago when I sort of started in my principal leadership, my senior leadership roles. This idea of being on the balcony was a conversation that happened all the time. You stand up there and you look down. Now, in my brain, and I'm a very visual sort of learner, I like to see things. I'm thinking about my staff seeing me on that balcony. And to me, that gives the wrong signal.
Like they're
So,
looking down, like you're looking down on them.
yeah, so
Yeah,
I need that overarching view, but I should only do that to give me information to then walk back down onto the dance floor and be with my team. I talk about it almost sometimes being the DJ,
yes,
knowing when to speed the music up or slow the music
yeah,
down,
that's so better.
knowing when to have a pause. But if I'm standing on the balcony and I see, Steve standing over in the corner, not really engaging with people. Now I could make a judgment about that, or I could get off the balcony, walk down and say, hey, Steve, what's going on? I'm noticing these things. The shift in leadership is really now about, I guess, this leadership that you're actually sitting amongst your team rather than above your team. And
Totally.
that's sort of the approach that I've used and the approach I talk about a lot in my book.
I agree with that. And I completely agree, because I used to hate when people used to say, I'm a leader that stands purely from the front always. But you know what? We can re-angle the balcony scenario. You're still on the dance floor with your team, dancing and learning new skills who are people who are better dancers than you. But you can also have a double to make sure at the side, if you will, still looking down at yourself as the self-reflection.
Yeah,
There we go.
absolutely. And the reality is as well, I have to go and I mentioned before about being the DJ, but sometimes I'm not also the best person to do that because
Yeah,
I've got the most experienced person, the smartest person, the person with the most knowledge about a particular area. Maybe they're better doing that than me, and maybe I need to sit back and learn from them. So just because I have the badge and the title doesn't always mean that I'm the one that needs to be standing up the front, or I'm the one that needs to be standing on the balcony,
yeah,
because I need to be harnessing the expertise within my staff room, and there's a hell of a lot of it. And I think in our adult learning space, we sometimes overlook that and think that leading has to be led by the leaders with the title. But I've got teachers that are way better at certain things than I'll ever be. They run rings around me, so why not get them up there to lead the work?
because you're out of control of that. Some people don't like that, do they?
But you know what? I learn more from doing that, and
Yeah.
then I can actively be a part of it.
Mhm.
And so it's just shifting the way we think around leading improvement, leading impact, leading people, but particularly leading adults.
Absolutely. I mean, you might have rode a wave. They might have rode a wave that you haven't yet. And it's like when people talk about, oh, I've got 20 years experience. Yeah, but you might have had the same experience just 20 times. It doesn't mean it doesn't mean you've, because obviously in education, where you do year after year after year, and you repeat yourself, you might have stayed in one year age level or group for 10, 20 years, whereas somebody else who's younger than you, been in the field for 10 years, might have been in every age gap, rode a certain wave that they've had to wave, been through the mist of things,
Yeah.
and come out of it quite much stronger on the other side of it, and that's experience over length of time, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. And we've seen a really big reform shift in our curriculum over the last couple of years in Victorian education here in Australia. And I've got some staff that have really invested time, their own time. They listen to podcasts and read books and those sort of things. So we sort of take this approach of leading the leaders. So, you've got the knowledge. So now how about you share that with our leadership team and build our capacity to lead the work with you? And it just empowers people to have the knowledge and do the learning and follow their passions and invest time because they know it's going to be valued.
Absolutely. Yeah. All right. Well, let's go to you. I usually start off with, I know we've not just started, we've started a while ago now, but we normally start off with how the guest is leading their own way. You're doing some wonderful things. You've written a book. I love it. I've got a copy of it here, and I'll get it down off the shelf shortly. You are doing a few different things in your life at the moment. How would you consider that you are leading your own way then?
Yeah, it's a interesting space, and a great question, very broad. I know, over the years we've had various conversations around this that have gone in various directions.
Yeah.
I think I guess the way that I'm leading my own way really is around, I'm constantly thinking about how can I have a greater impact on the people that are relying on me to be led. And that doesn't mean that it's about me being the person that's going to lead them, but what can I do? How am I going to have a greater influence? What can I do to empower my teams to actually have a greater influence? And it's a bit of a challenging point of view, but when we're talking about education, students are always at the centre, and that's, we can't dispute that because that's why we're employed, that's why we're here, that's why education facilities are there. Whether the students are primary, secondary, tertiary, whatever it is, they're built around the education of the student. I guess the conflicting view I have there is my staff have the direct impact on the students. So their first port of call is how do I influence the students? As the senior leader in the school, my influence needs to be on the adults, the teachers, the educators.
Yeah.
So often we hear this conversation around students are at the center of my decisions. Yes, tick 100%. But when it comes to impact, the adult learners are at the center of my influence, because the greater influence I have on them, the greater influence they're going to have on the students.
It's logical, isn't it?
Mm.
I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. So how does that look for you then? You've been a principal for many years. You've done many... Just quickly talk about your principal journey and where you've been to where you are about to venture on a bit of a new journey for yourself.
Yeah, it's a very new journey.
Yeah, it's cool.
So I got my first senior leadership role, sub-school principal, back in 2015. Prior to that, I was a campus assistant principal at a residential school. And that basically, I got seconded there. We turned a school camp, into a residential school. So students would come in with outdoor and environmental education. So my main roles there were curriculum development, program development. Then I was fortunate enough to get a role at opening a new school as sub-school principal. And my main role there was middle year. So I was developing the secondary component of the school whilst leading the senior primary school, because we didn't have any secondary students starting till the following year. So my main role, we had no furniture, no staff, no curriculum. So there was no uniforms. So for the secondary school, that was. So it was a big year of getting that school built. And whilst I led sort of the senior primary school area, and that was in the fastest growth corridor in Australia. So we grew, there were 160 on day one of opening of 2015. I left about 3.5 years later and we had 1,600 kids. Incredible. So we're putting on a class and a half to 2 classes a term of students. The growth was just unbelievable. But we had roughly 80% of our teachers were in their first 3 years. So it was a bit of a sink or swim scenario. And we had really great supports. But, when you've got that many new, inexperienced teachers, the supports and the growth, there was always a bit of conflict between what we could offer and what, in terms of just human resources to be able to support those teachers. But in saying that, some of the best graduate teachers I've ever come across were there, because they hit the ground and they just ran. So it was an amazing learning experience. It was high paced. I've said often that I've never worked so hard in my life, but I've also never felt so supported. Amazing leadership team, really high expectations, and just a great learning environment. I went from there to almost the other end of the scale. So principal of a rural school where we crossed paths. Back in, would have been at 2020.
Yeah, it's either the beginning of 2020 or the end of 19.
End of 19, yeah. Around there. When you popped out and did some CRT, many moons.
Casual relief teaching, supply teaching, or substitute teaching, depending on where you're listening.
For the international listeners.
You came out, I remember that day actually. I'd never really been to a country school before because I was new to the area. And you were out there, I remember, probably prepared to meet the parents as they came through. But I arrived 30 minutes before to make sure I'd have enough time to prepare, don't worry. But you were picking up litter. I remember you picking up rubbish.
Yeah,
I was like, oh, who's this dude? He's my age. He's probably been teaching 10 years. Nope, he's the principal.
And that was a great experience. I went there, and there was there'd been some incidents that had occurred within the community a few years prior, and so there was a really fractured relationship between the school and the local community.
Yeah.
And so one of the, I guess, strategies I took there, in a very different environment to the fast-paced, really sort of dynamic environment. We're continuously getting more staff, more students, had to have really structured programs so that they were transferable for every new class, to this smaller dynamic school that had very consistent staff over several years, but had such a fractured relationship with its local community. and it should be the hub of the community. But again, due to other things that were out of people's control, had just meant that this had occurred. So, a few things, a very different type of leader I was needed to be there. And that was around, and we've mentioned it before, around you do your best work at the front gate. That was sort of the motto that came out. So I'd be at the front gate every morning, every night. And I know a lot of leaders do this, but it was really important to talk to the families and connect with the families and build relationships and basically mend some of the bridges that had been broken over time. And so that took time. And one of the things that I always do in all my environments is you have pride in the environment, because when you walk into a school, you want the families to have pride that they go to this school. Like, this is an amazing place. It's an amazing facility for my students. It's a safe facility. They're going to learn. They're going to be happy. They're going to be looked after. And so one of the things, I'll always walk around in the morning and make sure that any rubbish that's been missed or left behind, we'll get that cleaned up before the day starts. So after that environment, I then I did a cameo at another school just outside of Geelong for a short stint. And then I'm in a suburban school in Geelong. And along that journey, I've had some secondments to executive roles within central office, or leading the principal network. So leading the professional learning for the principal network, which is called an executive chair role. So I've been elected to that in the rural school network, and now I'm in the suburban network. I've been elected to that role as well. So it's been plenty of balls in the air over the 10 years in principal class roles.
What's that like? It's all relative, isn't it? Your nerves and your imposter syndrome kicks in at every level, I suppose, isn't it? But once you're then all of a sudden leading a facilitation where you are leading principals, what does that feel like? And did you fall into it? Was there many trip ups? Did you have any, people who sat there and is the same as the staff at your school or the students in the classroom? Were they conflicted? Did they ask questions you're like, oh, I don't know how to do that? What was that like for you when you first started it?
Look, it was a daunting experience to kick off with. Like, I was taking over from an executive chair, had been there for many years, very experienced, and I was, a fairly young leader in stepping into that role. Probably my first experience was very passionate, as we are, and I sent out a survey to the network principals. So there were 27 schools, and that's primary, secondary, P12, which is prep to 12, and a special school as well, and an alternative setting. So out of those schools, there's a vast range of environments. And I sent out this survey to say, right, had a list of 20 things. So can you prioritise in your school from 1 to 5, 1 being not a priority, 5 being a priority, which of these you are going to be working on in your school? So I could get a bit of an idea about how to build the professional learning that was going to be meaningful for the network. And I had some very interesting responses, which I'm like, I was a bit disappointed that, they just put, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, no, we're all good. And I'm like, well, that's not fact, because we know we're all working on something.
Yeah.
I had one school, a secondary school, didn't answer the survey at all. And then they called me and said, look, we appreciate what you're doing, but we don't use the network for professional learning. We look after ourselves. We'll be there, we'll engage, we won't be a problem, but thanks, but no thanks.
Oh, wow.
And it was respectful, but it caught me off guard. And I spoke to my direct manager. I'm like, I don't know how to handle this. What do I do here? And it was an interesting conversation, but I sat back and thought about the reality of walking into a room of 27, 28 principals. And my head is going to your principals, your leaders of schools, you will get it. You get what it means to have to engage with learning and professional learning. Yeah. But what I didn't reflect on at the start, which I did at this point, was that in that room, I've got principals that are dealing with really highly challenging, complex situations. I've got acting principals that are stepping into the role, whether by choice or because their principal's on leave and they've stepped up. I've got principals that are really feeling overwhelmed and possibly completely stressed around the roles they're doing. I've got principals that are wanting to apply for a higher job or a better job, so they really want to impress and be in there. And I've got principals that are turning up just because they have to.
Yeah.
So once I sort of acknowledge that part of it, it doesn't mean that it's okay, but it allowed me to look at the room a little bit differently and approach it a little bit differently to go, I'm not going to get 100% buy-in yet, but I'm going to be okay with that.
Yeah.
And that was almost the catalyst for the writing my book, because I started to go, well, how do I do this in my school? Because I know when I walk into the room and we're leading something new, a new initiative, I don't have 100% buy-in, and I'm okay with that because I approach it in a way that means that we'll get there, but we're going to take our time and we're going to be really intentional. So how do I translate that into a space where I've got senior leadership? What does that look like for me? And so I started to work through a bit of a process of going, okay, well, I know these people are engaged. I know these people are engaged. I know these people are having challenges. So how do I support this room of senior leaders to still achieve the goals that we want to achieve?
Love it. Yeah, and that, I mean, that'll again come crystal clear how that converts to the skim model, doesn't it?
Yeah,
The categories of the types of people and types of thinkers, the mind, having their minds in mind is powerful, isn't it? I think that's probably a good start then. Let me bring down the Art of Skimming Stones. Here's your book, and you've just touched on why the book, why you started to write the book. It's a really cool story of why you came up with the name. Why the Art of Skimming Stones briefly then? Just taking a very quick break to thank our sponsor, SU Skincare. If you haven't heard of them, SU Skincare started right here in Australia, using Australian ingredients to make skincare straightforward and accessible, especially for men who want results without the fuss. Their journey took them all the way to the US, where they were featured in Macy's and over 300 stores. Now they're back with a fresh approach, focusing on healthy skin and authenticity for everyone. I'm proud to have SU Skincare as a sponsor on Leading Our Own Way. See the show notes for their website and to see how you can keep your skin healthy and confident. And if you're interested in sponsoring like SU Skincare, drop us a message. We'd love to hear from you. Now, right back to the episode.
Well, it's, when I was going through this idea of what do I do as a leader, and the interesting thing about leadership models is there's not a hell of a lot of them around. Mm-hmm. So we can throw out something like Kotter's 8 Steps, a really well-known model. But in terms of the evolution, there's heaps of frameworks. Like if you go into almost every state, they'll have a leadership framework. But a framework and a model are different. I look at the frameworks like if you were a chef, they're your cooking techniques. How do I al dente veggies, or how do I cut things in a particular way? What's the materials I need? Whereas a model is your actual recipe book. That's the hands-on work. That's the actual putting the skills that you're learning through the framework into actual practice.
Yeah.
And I've led a number of successful schools, and I've done this in various ways, but what do I do that means that I can have the impact that I need to have? And I started to ask those questions, and I just started drawing what I did and trying to put it into a picture. As I said earlier, I'm a very visual person, so I start with a picture and scribbled it around. And I drew this picture, and I didn't know what it meant yet, but I sort of had it in my mind. And I was actually camping with my family at this beautiful place, which has currently been through some pretty traumatic events here in Victoria, Wye River.
Oh, so, God, yeah, just the other day. Oh, my God.
Yeah, well, we were camping there again, and we had the catastrophic fire conditions. So we had to evacuate. We evacuated for a bit over 24 hours until things settled, and there were fires that didn't get burnt, but there were fires around there. And then a week later, they got 180 mils of rain in 3 hours and flooded out and washed caravans and cars. We weren't there then, and I think from what I've read, they had 10 minutes warning, like it was that quick. So
I know, I couldn't believe it.
they've been going through a bit at the moment. But
Yeah.
beautiful place on the Great Ocean Road in Victoria, Australia. And I was standing there with my kids, and we're walking along. There's a little river there, and I've got two young boys and an older girl, and they picked up rocks and were trying to skim them. And I sort of stopped, and, like I say in my book, I got, the proud dad wobble. Here's a teaching opportunity that it's a life skill, being able to skim a stone. And so I started sort of teaching them, and we were picking up and dropping stones, and till we could find the right one, and we were having a go at it, waiting for the wind to drop so we had a nice flat surface, and it just clicked. I'm like, this is exactly the narrative that explains the model that I've drawn in my book.
Yeah.
And it just luckily really connected with me, and it was at that exact moment I've got it, it's cemented in my mind the exact moment it came to me. I'm like, this is it. This is how I explain the model to someone else.
It makes perfect sense, doesn't it, when you translate it to that, whether it's leadership or just living life, I suppose. We could give each other the same rock. I mean, that's pretty much impossible, but we could give each other the same rock for scientific purposes. But if you throw it slightly different to me, we're going to get different results. So that's how we have to treat that life, being at work, even in life with our families, our wife, our children, whatever it may be. It's fascinating, and it's actually quite a nice way of looking at it, isn't it?
And the idea behind as well, when you're picking up a stone to skim, the first one you pick up may not be the right one, so you drop it.
Yeah.
And this idea that you actually end up saying no to more stones than you say yes to, because you're looking for the right stone. You're not just going to skim any stone you pick up unless, you happen to be fortunate enough to pick up that right one. But this idea of picking up and dropping stones, looking for the right stone, not the first stone, not the easy stone to grab, but the right one that's going to have the skim that you're looking for. Like, that part of the analogy at the beginning is just a lesson that I think is nice to think about, that we don't have to say yes. In fact, we should be saying no more than yes. Particularly when we're talking about, in my space, leading improvement or leading impact, that you're actually saying no to more things than yes, because you're looking for the right thing, not the easy thing, not the first thing.
Yeah. Because this model is more around, it's not necessarily a leadership practice model, it's more of around of an improvement practice, isn't it? Is that right?
Yeah. And it's about people. It's about...
Well, what do you think my first note is there? People focus first.
Yep. It's what it's got to be about. Who is in your staff room, and what type of leader do they need you to be to get the greatest impact? Like that, it's a really simple scenario. But, going back to what I said earlier, the reason we do our job and the most complex part of our job are the people. We can't, get past that.
Yeah.
So how do we then go, all right, that's my staff room. What do I need to do to get the best out of them? And it's going to look a little bit different for each of your team. But I've yet to come across a teacher that woke up in the morning and went, oh, gee, I can't wait to do a crap job today.
Yes, I know. I know.
It doesn't mean there's no conflict, and it doesn't mean maybe our values or beliefs are not aligned. That's okay. That's the complexity of people. But it's finding how do we then try and bring them as close as possible to align to what we need.
Yeah.
And there's not an exact science, because people are complex. But if we accept that, then we can actually move beyond the conflict and start to think about, how do I problem solve here and lead this person to get the most effective impact out of them?
Absolutely. I mean, I remember when I used to, going back to the meetings when people used to come in and talk about leadership models, I used to sit there and go, this is a beautiful model. It's easy. It's easy to understand, and I feel inspired. But then through reflection, I'd sit there and go, yeah, but that doesn't cater for part of my personality. And I know these people over here, well, that's not thinking about them over there. So you can talk about all these models in the world, but they don't have the characters and the personalities, and certainly the things that these people are going through, both good or bad. in mind. It just can't. It's physically impossible. I could create this model, but it doesn't cater for the schools over there, or even just the retail place. It just can't cater for them because I don't know. It's about understanding the people at a deeper level. See, there's three things that I'd love to change with the education system. I'm not here to get in. I mean, I've worked with the government, and I'd love, but one of them is change how we hire people.
Yeah.
Oh man, it kills me. Look, I could list all these Viso words that you want me to say. I could list all these keywords that you want me to say. Does that mean I'm going to get the job? Probably, because I've hit every single nail on the head. No. Come and have a cafe. Let's go and have a coffee. If I'm a leader, I'm going to go take them for a coffee into a cafe, and let's see if they can just talk and can connect with me. Simple. Yeah. Because I can make you the best teacher on the planet, or I'd like to think I could, but I can't. I don't know if you're a good person through you selling yourself in an interview. It's fake. It's not real. I know they're acting, because I used to act like I was a really good teacher. you know, going into an interview, I'd be so nervous because I knew I'd ramble. But I'd love them to see he's rambling because he actually cares. But he never got me the job.
Yeah, and it's true. I can teach people to be a teacher.
Yeah.
It's a skill. It's a pretty concrete skill. We can set up the structures that allow for that. But I can't teach someone to be a good person.
No.
I can't teach someone to have different values or beliefs. That they're often embedded. And it doesn't mean they're not a good person generally, or it doesn't mean that their values and beliefs are wrong. It just means that do they connect and align with what we need in our environment?
Yeah.
And so, it has to be a really intentional decision around. And I don't want robots. I actually want a really good, diverse range of people sitting in my staff room. And it's actually, we often get caught on this idea that, here's Andy over the back rolling his eyes at me again. Oh, great. What's coming this time? And we start to get worked up about this. Now, if it's a behavior, so rolling the eyes, that's a conversation. That's a performance conversation. But if I know that Andy sitting in the back of the staff room is going to challenge me and going to add some questioning to my initiative, my process, our intent. Do you know what? Andy's actually helping me be a better leader, because I have to be a little bit more prepared. I have to do a little bit more research. I have to think about alternative options. I have to walk into the room with evidence, not to convince, not to persuade, because they're not leadership strategies that are effective. They'll get a surface level compliance, but they won't get us commitment. So I need to, knowing that I know the people in my staff room and knowing that I'm going to get some challenges from Andy, will ensure that I'm a little bit more prepared for those. Not to rebut them, but to consider them, or to have evidence to support, or have evidence to challenge some of the questions in a respectful and professional manner. So we often look at those people that challenge us in leadership as a negative part of our staff room. I challenge that to say, I actually want them in there because they make me a better leader. They are developing my leadership strategies and skills unintentionally, only because I need to consider what approach that I have to stand up in front of my staff with to ensure that we have an effective conversation, a robust discussion. We can address all the things that might be in the way, but I'm not there to actually change Andy's mind yet. But he has the right to ask questions and challenge thinking, because I'm sure that he wants the best for his classroom.
You would think, wouldn't you? Because a lot in those moments, though, that's where the language I've seen many leaders talk about. We need you to buy in. Let's say it's a new program or a new way of thinking, a new philosophy they've brought into the school, a new literacy program for whatever reason. I hear that language quite a lot. We need you to buy in.
Yeah.
Oh, it kills me. And I don't know why. It just icks me.
What you need is me to lead you to understand why it's important to buy in.
Yeah, to inspire me to buy in.
That's what has to happen.
Yeah.
You need to be led to a different understanding, to see that this is not going to be in conflict to your values or your beliefs, that it's going to value add to the work that you do, that it's important that we get there because of A, B, and C. And I'm not going to do that through just saying to you, I need you to buy in, or convince you this is really important. or try and persuade you to do it. You have to be led. And I think sometimes we get those, there's small sort of changes in our language, but also changes in our behaviors that with a slight shift, I don't need to get upset because I'm getting challenged. I'm going to accept that challenge, because sometimes those questions, if I get through the emotion, are actually bloody good questions. And we might need to go back to the drawing board and have a think.
Yeah, that's right. And I know there's pressures beyond that level, because they have pressures from the department, let's say, to get stuff done. And I get all of that. But for me, that was when I hear that language, and I have heard it as a CRT as well. But I heard it quite a lot when in other scenarios. But that's telling me that if I don't buy in, there's only another option, and that's the door. And for me, then straight away, leaving out of that meeting, cortisol's come out of my body. Yeah. I feel stressed, and my the connection, the value of my core value of connection has disappeared. So straight away, I go to sleep that night not feeling valued, not wanting to go to work the next day, and then it's just a rolling effect, and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, because I have to then go and input and pursue that new idea when I don't feel that, whether I'm heard or not. Whether I end up liking it or not down the track is a different matter. But I don't feel heard in the first place. And that's quite detrimental, I think, especially when we're dealing with connection and we're supposed to be setting that example to the children in the first place.
Yeah, and that having that model and being really intentional about how you approach it allows you to accept that, because I don't need you to buy in now. Yeah. I'm not going to get you to do this just yet, because I've got to do some work between here and here to give you the skills, the knowledge, the confidence, the psychological safety, the understanding of the concept, because you're going to need a different version of it to maybe the people that are jumping in early.
Yeah. So
I'm going to give you time, and time is okay. We can get caught in this trap of thinking we're in a race, and I sort of ask my team, like, who are we racing?
Yeah.
We get these timelines, but, if we're not ready to meet those timelines and we have a genuine reason why, and because our team's not there, that's okay. But, I don't think I've ever seen anyone punished for just going, do you know what, we're going to stop and we're going to take this a little bit slower because we want to get it right. So we get this perceived pressure, sometimes systematic pressure. Sometimes we just feel the pressure because we think we need to do it now. But I always say just stop and have a breath for a minute. And one of the questions my team, I'll always might come in heightened about something, and I'll just pose the question: if I did absolutely nothing today, nothing with this problem, with this issue, would everything be okay tomorrow? And I reckon 99% of the time it'll be yes, but okay. So that means we've got time to think, and we've got time to problem solve, and we've got time to bring the people in that we need to collaborate with, to make sure that we get the right outcome, not the outcome that comes to mind, so we can get this problem fixed or put a Band-Aid on it. Yeah. So there's when we're talking about these things of leading people, we have to understand it's no different to leading our students. It's no different to any other scenario in learning. Not everyone is going to learn at the same pace, and that is okay. So we don't need to force it. We just need to be intentional about it. It doesn't mean that those people are off the hook. It just means their time is not today, and that's okay.
Yeah. Is it a common occurrence? It is from my observational evidence. But is it a common occurrence? When a new appointed leader, whether experienced or inexperienced, a new leader, for example, they always something always has to change, and it's because they need to make it look like they are being a leader. Being part of a leader is making a change, inputting a new program, changing something to put their stamp on things. Does that make sense? Yeah. I would love it if a leader, and I would, maybe it's through the question of the interview, what are you going to change at this school to drive a certain outcome? I would love just to sit there for you. I don't mean sit on my ass and do nothing and get paid a heap of shitloads of money, but to sit back, get to know my people, understand where people are at, see where they're stressed, see what they're loving, see what their strengths and weaknesses are, whether they perceive it as a weakness, might not be a weakness. why do leaders come in and constantly have to make a change within weeks?
Yeah, I think there's a perception. You've got the idea of imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
Um, some want to set a bit of a tone about who they are and what their expectations are. You know, it might be young leaders, but it's not necessary as well. There's some
No.
more experienced leaders that will get into new environments and do the same thing.
Yeah.
So it comes back to, again, making sure that the values are aligned with the work and understanding the people that are sitting in the staff room. And when you're in a big system, sometimes the implementation approaches tend to overshadow the people in your staff room. Well, these are the things we have to do, and here are the people that will need to do them. Yeah, and that's, I guess, my approach is to actually flip that and go, well, who are the people? And now how are we going to use the leadership strategies with the people sitting in my staff room to get the best out of them to then do the things?
Yeah.
And that's a hard shift, because when you're in a system that is driving certain initiatives and outcomes, and you need to have A, B, and C, you're measured on data that's, for the public viewing, of both wellbeing and academic data. It becomes quite challenging, and you need to have a lot of sense of self as a leader and a lot of confidence in self to be able to go, actually, we're just going to slow this down. That'll happen. But right now I need to focus on understanding the people sitting in my staff room. That confidence is really about reflection and understanding self as a leader. Yeah. And something I'll always argue is the most important part of leadership development is self before others. You have to understand yourself as a leader, your strengths, your dispositions. What do you look like when you're stressed or overwhelmed? How do you respond when things are challenging? What are your defaults? What are your go-tos that you naturally lean on that may not be the best strategy, but because they're easy and something that's embedded, when you're tired and overwhelmed, you just go to that. Understanding how you are perceived by others. So what is it like to be led by me? Is such an important strategy or step in your development to then go, well, if they perceive me like this, how do I need to act or behave or change the way I lead in order to get a better response? Because they're not just going to change because you're the new leader. It's on you as the leader. This is why it's complex and challenging to understand what they need from you. And the only way you do that is actually having a really deep understanding about self.
I mean, I couldn't agree more, because after my trauma, my life had almost ended through that septic shock I think I explained to you many months ago. I wrote a book called How to Lead with Purpose with another best-selling author from the UK who wrote a book around NLP and leadership and so on. His angle's more around sport, though, however, but we connected the dots together. If I could write a book again, I probably wouldn't write a book about how to lead with purpose, because one valuable thing I've learned in my journey through studying the brain, human physiology, and just the experience alone, you have to live with purpose before you lead with purpose.
Yep.
And that is totally understanding yourself, putting that, I know we go back to the aeroplane thing, put the mask on yourself before going to anybody else. If you're not looking after yourself, how can you look after other people, whether it's at home, whether it's at work, and so on. I do want to get into the book, but I think it's probably a good point to go back to you. You start this book off with the story of origin. And I think I think that's beautiful. I think that's perfect. It just speaks my language completely. Let's start with your origin and your start of origin. Let me hear yours. Let everybody hear yours. What do people not know about Steven Trotter? Because you do explain in the book quite a lot about you. There's things I learned in the book about yourself which I didn't know you did as well. Yeah. So let's go back to your start of origin.
And I think this is a great point for any leaders out there. And this isn't about education, because leadership's transferable. I'm just talking about it within the environments that I work.
Yeah.
But I call it your leadership story of origin, because we all have these embedded beliefs and values that have been built over years and years of events, activities. It could be trauma, it could be happiness, it could be work environments, it could be leaders, it could be people of influence, it could be sporting, it could be whatever it is. But events and activities over your life have built certain dispositions, certain capabilities, skills, or I refer to them as defaults often, because they're embedded in what we do, so we often are not aware when they come out.
That's right.
They're behaviors that we have that we've done for years. And one of the times that will trigger these behaviors are when you are stressed and overwhelmed, because if you're cognitively full, you're cognitively overloaded, you're stressed, you're overwhelmed, you will naturally lean on skills that don't take a lot of energy and cognitive space, which are the things that are embedded inside you. And they're being built due to events and scenarios in your leadership story of origin. So part of my development and my own reflection on how do I lead the way I lead and why do I lead the way I lead was actually going back and thinking of all the significant events in my life and what strategies, skills, learning did I get from them. So I grew up in a rural town called Ballarat, which is in Victoria, Australia, and my parents owned pubs. So that was a very different environment. We actually lived on the third story. So there was a bar in there. There was a restaurant. My dad's a chef. My mum, teacher, and then principal, but she worked in the pubs as well. And then upstairs, the second story was normally sort of more restaurant space, function space. And then the third story in the pub was our house. So we lived up there. An amazingly unique environment to grow up in. I was really well protected from probably a lot of the negativity in these environments. Like I wasn't really, I can't vividly remember people being, overtly drunk or, any incidents in terms of just around the bar as I was growing up, living in these environments. So I was well protected from those things. But one of the things that became part of my reflection was, as I grew up, we would spend some time playing through weekends and after school in and out of the bar, and there were lots of locals that lived in there. So I started to develop skills to talk from, there were lawyers that would come in right through to retired elderly men that had had remarkable careers. And so I'd spend my time just walking around the bar talking to people. So I guess as I got into different environments and, you wear different hats and you will talk to a certain person and then I'll talk to someone else and I'll be able to connect with them in different ways. I don't feel that there's a level of superior, I guess, academic ability or superior work or superior. It's just people. And so the conversations you are able to have with and try and find ways to connect are built as a very young child. And I vividly remember having those opportunities through the bar or playing pool against some random people, having to pull a chair around because I couldn't see over the pool table. But also through that era, I learned, as I reflected back, a really high level of work ethic. And that was from my mum and dad, who worked ridiculous hours in the pub, would shut it down on a Sunday. That was family day. And we still didn't miss out on opportunities. I don't recall not having opportunities to spend with my mum and dad. Yet I know Dad would be up at 6 a.m. in the morning doing prep for brekkie and then would do the close in the bar till 1 a.m. in the morning and then be up and do it again.
Yeah.
So in my head, I'm like, how would you function? But they did. So that was a really interesting space to grow up in, and one that not many people would have. It was very unique, but one that I really value in many of the lessons I learned and values that are embedded as a younger student, a younger child. As I went through school, I was never overly academic. I was a bit of a cruiser, didn't really push myself. Probably could have done a lot better than I did, but I was pretty happy with my world. A bit of a cheeky student, and which is probably why I sort of went initially into primary before I went to secondary, because I thought, would I have wanted to teach me and my mates? Probably not.
I think we can well say that.
Yeah. And through high school, though, I got an opportunity through an international peace program. So I was lucky enough to be selected as an Australian delegate, and I travelled to Italy when I was 11 on an international peace program, and then Costa Rica when I was 16, Indonesia when I was about 14, Philippines when I was 18, and then was supported a couple of the programs one in Geelong where I live now, and one in Perth. Um, like I attribute a lot of significant, particularly around inclusion, around the work that I do. We were actually on a camp not long after September 11, and we had a number of other Islamic peers on that program, and to hear the difficulty that they were facing as a result of this, but also the community conversations around that, was overwhelming. And I've got friends, so particularly after that period when people would sort of start to put the terrorism into one category, I'd be able to go, no, actually that's not accurate, because I've got friends that are beautiful people and would never think of harming a soul. So the reality of that world was amazing. It's Children International Summer Villages, and it was a program developed in the United States by a psychologist called Doris Allen, who passed away a few years ago. And it was after the war, and her goal was to actually bring children together, initially from some of the war countries, to actually build peace because they make connections. So if I'm friends with someone from another country where we might be in conflict, I know it's not necessarily going to influence my world moving forward because I know they're good people.
Yeah.
So amazing program worldwide. Unfortunately, it's not massive in Australia, but internationally it's huge.
That was funny. Sorry to cut you off. It was actually funny how you found out about that, wasn't it? It was the people on the camp actually wanted to speak to your parents, I read, and you thought, this is what's he done now? But it was actually quite the opposite.
It was, a mate was in the program and his family were in it, and they have these programs called mini camps where they just pull the members together.
Yeah.
And do like a version of one of the international programs over a weekend. And you go to those, and that's how you sort of get selected to go onto other programs. I had no idea what I was going to. It just sounded like a bit of fun. So I went along, and I remember through the program they were asking, what's your age? When's your birthday? And I just had a good time. And afterwards they just asked if they could meet with mum and dad, and about 6 weeks later, I was off to Italy. So
amazing.
It was a bit of a surprise, but again, just an opportunistic moment that I'm really glad occurred, because as a result of that, I've travelled the world and met amazing people from so many different countries and cultures, and learnt about them and their culture. And then what does that mean, when I come back to Australia? How do I approach that in my environments that I now am privileged to lead? When I've got a minority culture that might be moving into the area, how do I ensure they feel supported and committed and supported, and that they can actually be a part and connected to our community? So there's a lot of valuable things in there, but I can honestly say a lot of this didn't happen until I started writing my book, and I actually had to sit down and think about, why do I lead the way I lead? So I'd absolutely encourage that to happen. Probably, I won't go through them all, but probably the other significant one was I umpired AFL football, but at the VFL State League level. And that is, to be honest with you, one of the most brutal environments that I've ever been involved in. And the leadership there felt it was very traditional, like sporting traditional, and I think international people would understand it's probably not unique to Australia, that it was, the coach traditionally was very much say as I do, say what I say goes. If I say jump, you jump. And it was very much the environment that if you can't handle the abuse from me, your coach, you're not going to handle doing this professionally. So it almost felt like, their goal was to see if they could break you.
You learnt a valuable lesson from that, didn't you?
Oh, yeah, it's unbelievable. Well, we were process driven, so everything had a process, and we were hammered process. So the rule book we knew inside and out. We tested on it weekly, and so everything was really heavily process driven. So that is now an embedded part of my world. Anything I do, I start to go, well, what's the process here? And there would be very few people that would argue, being a process-driven person, process-driven leader is not a really great skill, and it is. But it's not always the best strategy. And I reflect really, and this sort of hit home to me. It was a good few years ago now, but I had a grad teacher who we had a process that we would follow for students that weren't meeting our expectations. And it was a really clear step-by-step process that supported the teacher to be able to manage, but then called for support if it got beyond those steps. And I got a note to say, look, they need some leadership support. And I came in and had a bit of a chat about what was going on, and noticed one of the steps in the process was missing. And so I asked the student to come for a wander so we could have a bit of a restorative conversation and work out what was going on to try and organise that. But I also gave a little bit of just gentle feedback to the teacher, say, hey, look, we've missed a step here. Probably if that was there, we may not have got to this point, but look, I'm here now, we'll get this organised. So had a chat, brought the student back in, had a chat with the teacher, and they started to mend the relationship a bit, got them back engaged with their work. Thumbs up. All the best. I'll be back to my office. And I reckon it was about half an hour later, I got another one. Same student, came back in, chat to the teacher, went back through what she, the process of how she got to the note to me. And I noticed she'd missed another step in the process. So I provided, before I spoke to the student this time, I just sort of explained why it's important we follow this process, and I started focusing on the chart that we had. And I didn't quite notice immediately, but I looked around and she was crying. And it was at that point I realized she didn't need a process, she needed a supportive leader. She was struggling. She just needed me to come in and give her a chop out and help her out a bit. And I didn't notice that. I went straight to process. Like, I'm overwhelmed. I was under the pump. I was doing some other things. And in my head, I'm like, well, the process isn't being followed. So no wonder I'm being called in here when maybe this could be avoided if we were doing. And so I just owned that, and got her into my office later that day and just said, look, I'm sorry. You know the process. I know you know the process. You were giving me a message and I didn't read it. So that's on me, not on you. So I talk about this idea of defaults. That's a default for me. And when I'm tired and overwhelmed, I'll 100% lean on process. But I also have to acknowledge that there's a dark side to that, or a shadow, that a process is not always the best approach. So being aware of that doesn't mean I don't fall into that space still, but it means I can get out of it a bit quicker before I have a staff member in tears because I have misread what they're trying to tell me. But still, it's something that's embedded in me, and I know that. And now my team know that because I've explained that to them. So if they see me falling into a trap where a process isn't the right response, but I'm leaning on it, I know that they're going to say to me, hey, Steve, maybe we rethink the strategy here. And it's just enough for me to go, no, actually, you're right.
Yeah.
So, we've always got to acknowledge that we sometimes see a process, if we spoke, it could be talked about as a strength, and it is. If it's used in the right time, right situation, right person, right event, but it also has a shadow that if it's not used at the right time, with the right people, for the right reasons, that it's not going to have the positive impact that you want it to.
Absolutely. I mean, when you're emotionally charged, your prefrontal cortex is switched off, so that means all your logic is switched off anyway. It's like when we're dealing with a child. I see people constantly being with the child, trying to talk them around. The kid's emotionally not regulated. Stop talking to him.
Yep.
hold
Yep.
space, sit with them. But I know they can't because they've got to get on with the other 20 kids, 25 kids worth of
Yeah.
teaching. So we pass it off to an aide, but the aide might not have the relationship that the teacher has with them necessarily. Not always, of course. There's some beautiful relationships out there. But just sit and hold space, man. And that's
Yeah.
what you realized in the moment. And that's really powerful. So how did that then go on after that? How did that relationship build? Did she reflect and go, "Oh my God, that was amazing to even recognize that"? I don't know. What was that like for her after that
Yeah,
moment of
I think
apology?
it was a relief for
Oh,
her.
massive, yeah.
Um, when we're sitting there, and it was a relief for me actually to own it.
Yeah.
Um,
What growth for
because
both of you.
yeah, and it wasn't on her. That's not her fault that she was communicating me in a way that she thought was going to be effective, but I didn't pick it up. That's on me that
Mm.
I've made decisions that have upset her, even though they weren't intentional. I have to own that. So, for me to sit there and just say, "Hey, do you know what? I stuffed up. You know what you're on about, and I misread the cues." Um, and we problem solved so that we had a bit more of a language around next time you're in this scenario, because it might be that I'm, about to get a phone call or just had a phone call or an email where I've got something going on that's really high level and my brain is at capacity. So we had a bit of a conversation around, well, if this happened again, what could we do as a team to make sure that I don't miss this cue and you can communicate with me what you need? So we were able to have a bit more of a conversation around, right, this is a tricky scenario. It didn't go the way we wanted to, but let's try and make sure that next time we can collectively as a team be a little bit more effective in supporting each other with what we need.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to go back to your football example because they kind of correlate with one another. Maybe you had an experience from that football coach, which I know you put in your book around.
Yeah.
I think you know which one I'm referring to, where he was honest with you. And that's where the two worlds collide. The old days and the modern day is
Yep.
colliding, right? He said he was honest with you, which I think should be honest with you because I
Yep.
don't think we're honest with children anymore or people even. I think we're scared of difficult moments. I think we're scared of difficult conversation. And being part of a good leader or a good human is still having the strength and the confidence to have a hard conversation, even when it doesn't
Yep.
sit right. But he was honest with you. You're just not ready to start refereeing, umpiring those difficult
Yep.
games that you desired and really badly wanted. But then he said, "Well, how dare you question me?" I'm
Yep.
paraphrasing, obviously.
Yep.
How dare you question me? And you walked away as a disconnect, and that
Yep.
still happens in the modern world, doesn't it? And that's where those two worlds were colliding. If he'd gone, you know what, I appreciate you bringing that to me. I now know where you sit, where you want, and your desires. And then he could have given you extra support of how to get it. Luckily, you went and did it yourself. You had the break, and
Yeah.
you went and got the
Yeah.
fire, and you went and learned and all that, which is great. That's a great learning skill within itself, isn't it? In
Yeah.
growth and resilience and persistence and delayed gratification and all of those elements that we don't have in the modern world anymore, even at home with food and hits and games and devices and go to school and we expect these kids to sit for 6 hours a day and we expect to throw curriculum down their throats. It's bizarre, isn't it? But I love
Yeah.
that scenario that you shared in your book.
Yeah, well, and that was, as a young umpire, I was trying my guts out. I was
Mm.
training, and probably for me, I had some peers that were hiding behind the sheds, having a smoke and mucking around, and they were getting higher grade games than I were, and I just couldn't work out what was going on, and I approached the coach and just said, "Hey, I'm wondering why I'm not getting higher grades." Now I can admit, I was a young, I was a teenager, so I wasn't rude or disrespectful, but I probably, didn't have a lot of tact in how I approached it. It would have been pretty direct, I'd say. Um, and he bluntly turned around and said, "You're not good enough," and it wasn't in a conversational way. It was in quite a belittling way.
All right, yeah.
And how dare you question me? I'm the coach. Basically it was a really blunt, and again, that's something that's really burnt in my brain after I sort of think about it. I can remember the scenario, remember the situation, He was a very, very tall person who just sort of bellowed over the top of me as a young bloke. And I went home and was throwing the towel in. I'm like, I'm done.
Yeah.
And this was at local league at this point. And I had the conversation with mum and dad at that point, and that they weren't about sucking it up, but they were like, you need to make this right, because if this is something you want to do, you have to swallow your pride. And even though your intent was not to, offend or upset, own that part of it. You did. You spoke to him. It might have been the wrong time, but you don't need to apologise for what he said, but you're part of it. You need to own that. So very, very hesitantly and probably at the time a bit begrudgingly, I got on the phone and I called the coach and apologised for questioning him. But it was a really difficult call, particularly for a young, proud teenager that thinks they know everything. But it was a lesson learned of owning my, like, I still do not agree with how it was handled by the coach. And I've got many examples of that, not that particular coach, but it was the culture of the environment that was one example of many different examples from different coaches. But the lesson about, I can't control what other people do, but I do have to own what I do, and I do have to control what I do. And even though I don't disagree with asking the question, probably I needed to rethink about how I addressed that and when I did it, timing, the conversation, all those sort of things. So again, at the time, it wasn't something that was learned. It's like the lessons you learn today are not for tomorrow. They're for, down the track.
Yeah.
And so I learned, but I went away then and went, right, he thinks I'm not good enough, but I believe I am. So now I'm going to prove him wrong. I believe I did. He wouldn't have any clue. So that's like, it's, you spend this time investing in energy of people, and I'm getting upset for someone who probably has no idea that they've upset me. So I have to choose what I'm going to actually have a battle over. And I'm not going to, at that point, again, I didn't intentionally do this, but I decided not to take the anger and frustration towards that person, but instead, I'm going to get myself fit. I'm going to make sure I'm doing everything right. And I'm going to, get to a level that I believe I should be at. And I exceeded that. So I think as leaders, we have more power than we give ourselves credit for in terms of, and not power in terms of a position, emotional understanding and regulation power and decisions around how we approach things. Yeah. Again, coming back to self, we actually own our own decisions and we have complete control over those. We can sometimes shift that and go, oh, the system, oh, we're taught, oh, well, no. The system, whatever the system is, and it doesn't have to be education, can provide you with certain parameters and certain pressures, but ultimately the decisions lie with the leader. And so we actually are empowered to make those decisions. We just need to build our confidence to be able to sit there and go, I'm comfortable with making this decision, and I'm comfortable with why I'm making it. And it's the right decision for my environment. And more importantly, it's the right decision for my people.
Yeah. And that scenario is definitely something that impacted you and helped you certainly lead in a way that you clearly lead in a very good way. But there's also something else that happened in your childhood that certainly impacted you and your family at the time, going back to I think you probably know where I'm going with this, with the pub and because there's other layers to this of how your parents conducted themselves in terms of being parents. Now you can perceive that as how they led their way to help you not go through what you could have gone through, even though it was still pretty dark, right?
Yeah. And I probably didn't realize how dark it was
That's right.
Again, that's probably a kudos to my parents for protecting me from as much as they could. But when we owned the pubs, there was a random night that a gentleman stopped into the pub. You used to be able to get takeaway beers. Was on his way, not from Ballarat, but was from another town, and his mum lived in Ballarat. He was on his way to visit his mum, found that our pub was open as he went past, dropped in to get some beers to take back to his mum's. Unbeknownst to my parents and the patrons of the pub, he'd been followed by a very well-known, notorious bikie gang, because he'd had some conflict with their members. And when he came into the pub, they came in. They were only in and out in about 2 minutes, but had baseball bats, iron bars, chains, and many of these members just came in, flooded in each door, said to the rest of the patrons, "We're not here for you." Each of them took one shot at him, and left him on the ground, basically pretty much dead.
Well, we've come to the end of part 1 with Steven Trotter. I think it's a conversation that definitely reminds us that leadership isn't about titles or ticking boxes. Something I've said for a very long time. Could go on it forever. But it's more about showing up as a real human being. That's why I asked that question at the beginning of the episode. It was fairly obvious. And it's about doing that even when it's tough. Steven's stories of resilience, humility, and hard-won wisdom are a powerful call to reflect on how we can connect with those we lead. But we're just getting started. Part 2 is coming up next. Well, that's coming on Wednesday, but along with our Tuesday Truth right in the middle, it's a special Tuesday Truth segment where I take pieces of both and put it into a nice bite-sized episode for you. So take a moment to let these insights sink in and get ready for even more practical strategies and raw honesty in the next episode. Until then, we'll see you then and keep leading your own way. Join us tomorrow to hear more from today's incredible guests and learn valuable insights to help you lead your own way. Don't forget to subscribe. We'll see you then.